So, having discussed the inaccuracies of looking at the future, this is this year's Future Watch issue, which is, of course, before the draft. So, anybody drafted this year isn't in it. I think, though, this does talk about sneak peek 2017 draft. Projected top 10. There it is. For this year's draft, they projected Matthews, Laine, Puljujarvi, Tkachuk, Chychrun, Nylander, McLeod, Uelevi, Dubois, and Yost. So it's strange how it worked out. I like that Yost got drafted early because I like it when somebody from the BC Junior League makes it. So, that's pretty cool. And for next year's draft, they have Nolan Patrick at first, and that seems to be the way it's going. Number 2, Liljegren from Rogel. He's a defenseman now, in the event that Vancouver has a poor season. If they could pick up another blue liner in the draft, hey, but it's a year down the road. So, let's take a look at prospects. How does Anaheim have so many really good prospects? I mean, they got Nick Ritchie coming up, and Ritchie, pretty good season with San Diego. Shea Theodore, who is on the team. Jakob Larson, probably going to make the team as well. Brendan Montour won't make it, he's 21 though, so he may make it ahead of Larson. And then their top 10 gets rounded out. Nelson's in there. And he's nearing bust territory because he's 23. Nicholas Kurdials is 22. And he's nearing bust territory as well. He was a 36th overall draft pick. Noasom, I believe, was a first-round draft pick of the Ottawa Senators. Got traded over in the Bobby Ryan deal, I believe. I believe it was him and Silverberg. So, It's an interesting situation Anaheim finds themselves in because they've got a pretty solid foundation in terms of their prospects right now, but they also have cap space. I'm not sure why they were so inactive on free agency unless they didn't like the market. That's quite possible, and I would commend them for not liking the market and holding on to their cap space. As much as I want to talk smack about the team I can't stand in Anaheim, I really can't fault them for the way that they've got the core, they're competitive, they're at the top, but they're still looking at their prospects. They're still making sure that cupboard is stocked. And there are some teams that are doing that really well, and there are some that aren't. A team with a pretty well-stocked cupboard right now is Arizona. Now, at the time this magazine comes out, Dylan Strome is the number 1 overall prospect. Christian Dvorak's number 10. Both of them, I believe, make the team next year. Dvorak's 20, Strome's 18, I believe. By the time October rolls around, Strome's 19. Not sure if Dvorak turns 21 before then. Christian Dvorak looks like a steal in the second round. Everything he's done in junior has been fantastic, and I believe he makes Arizona. And this is part of the reason why with Strome and Dvorak added, it's hard to imagine Arizona staying at the bottom. It really is. Because Domi's a year older, Duclair's a year older. They've still got Oliver Ekman-Larsson on the blue line. I guess goaltending could be what holds them back. Arizona will have cap space because they always do. But, the new GM, who knows what's going to happen. And the rest of their prospect pool, Henrik Samuelsson's looking like he may be bust territory. But he was a 27th overall pick in 2012, so it's a tough call at that point. Boston. This is a tough list because they have Jakob Zboril in here at 42nd overall in terms of their prospect list, which isn't really indicative of who's actually going to be a star later. I've looked through a lot of these old magazines. I've got them going back 10 years now, and it's hard to say. But Zboril is the only first-round draft pick that Boston picked up last year out of the 3 in a row they had that's actually first-round projected. He was then, and he's still capable now. But in the second round last year, Jakob Forsback or Carlson, that could be a home run. And he's a center. And Boston loses Koklachev. So in terms of prospects, there is room for another prospect at center. Might be part of the reason why they didn't work that hard to keep Koklachev or keep him happy. Malcolm Subban shows his third. But at 22 years of age, he needs to start getting NHL time. And maybe this is the year, but they signed Hudobin as the backup, and I don't think you sign Hudobin as the backup for $2.4 million over 2 years. If you have total faith that Malcolm Subban's going to be your backup, and I'm starting to wonder if there's a trade in the works. I'm starting to wonder. Like Nashville picks up PK Subban. What if Nashville picked up Malcolm Subban as well? You know, just the idea of having PK playing in front of his own brother. It's an attractive idea, and it's one that would sell tickets. I would buy to watch that. I mean, if Vancouver were to have Jordan Subban on the blue line and Malcolm behind him, I would be interested to see how that dynamic works. I think it'd be fun. I was actually, in a way, hoping PK would end up in Vancouver and then maybe Malcolm, and then, you know, I'd like to see all three brothers play together. They have Koklachev fourth. Well, he's gone. Zenishin, yeah, he became a lightning rod over the summer when the Bees selected him higher than most prognosticators projected. But he scored well. He did. He scored relatively well, but defense is a problem. Claude Julien won't play him if he can't play defense. I know he's got defensemen who don't play defense. I'm saying forwards who don't play defense don't get a lot of ice time in Boston, if any. Brandon Carlo, Jake DeBrusk is down at 7th on here. Trade from Swift Current hasn't solved big decline in goal production. I don't think DeBrusk is going to come up as a goal scorer, though. I think he's going to be a role player to start with. He's not a fighter like his dad, but I think that's where Boston has him pegged. And there's Frank Donato at 10th, which is odd because Frank Donato played fantastic in Providence and played well in Boston, but there's still a lot more there, I think. I think Vetrano still has a lot more to give. And it'll be interesting to see if Boston puts him in the everyday lineup this year, even though a lot of Bruins fans don't like him. Buffalo. Brendan Gooley is their highest rated prospect. They have Hudson Fasching in here. Justin Bailey, who seems, I don't know, decent totals in Rochester. The thing with Buffalo is most of their prospects are already on the team, so obviously their list of prospects isn't going to be that great. Calgary, accelerate the rebuild. John Gillies is their premier player. Emile Poirier. I don't know if Poirier is ever going to be an everyday NHLer. The potential's there, certainly. Maybe he needs a trade. I don't know. Rasmus Anderson. He's the draft pick that went to Calgary in the Sven Berchi deal. And I'm very terrified that Anderson will become a top 6 defenseman. Not this year, though. Jankowski's on this list. I don't know that Jankowski will ever play in the NHL. I just don't know. Shinkarik's on this list, so this was after the trade from Vancouver. Skilled scorer, flourishing in second pro season, has become physically stronger. And I think the reason Vancouver traded him, I think, is they felt that he had peaked. And I don't think they were happy with his overall progression. And they felt that they had to trade him with his value as high as it was going to get. I just don't understand why Granlund was the only thing they could get for him. I know he fell in the draft because a lot of teams didn't like him, but I guess we'll see. There's Bill Arnold. Well, Arnold's not in the picture anymore. He's an unrestricted free agent. Carolina, Hayden Fleury and Sebastian Aho. And Hayden Fleury, the idea of having Hayden Fleury and Noah Hannafin in Carolina, that's pretty solid nucleus to build your defense around. The problem in Carolina is they're below the cap floor right now, according to NHL, the general manager website. They're below the cap floor. Below the floor. And all the big names are pretty much gone out of free agency. So I'm not sure how this is going to work for Carolina. You're a team that's in financial distress. You're a team that your attendance has fallen. Your team has fallen. And in the offseason, you just don't seem to show any signs of upwards movement at all. And that's tough. There's Roland McEwen at number 7. That's another draft pick that the Canucks were supposed to have, and they traded away. It's a very common theme. Part of the reason I got upset with the Jared McCann trade, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again, these draft picks can come back to haunt you, especially in the sheer volume of draft picks that the Canucks have given away. They did it with Burke, they did it with Nonis, they did it with Gillis, and now they're doing it with Benning. You give away draft picks, and eventually that lack of depth in your prospect system comes back and bites you. And there's another one. Gustav Forsling, who the Canucks drafted and then they traded. Offensive skill stood out at 2015 World Junior Championship, hasn't missed a beat in top league. And Forsling got signed to an entry-level deal by Chicago in the offseason. So with Chicago's ongoing cap and with the fact that they constantly have to look within for somebody to come up and the next player who's capable of playing, maybe Forsling gets that shot. They don't have a lot in the way of defensive prospects. Ville Polka, I guess, would be the closest you're going to get to that. He's not the fastest player, and the physicality of the North America pro game took some time getting used to, and that's about Ville Polka. That's not good. If you're 20, 21, and they're looking at your mobility and your ability to play the physical North American game, you're probably not going to make it. Colorado, bafflingly, Calvin Pickard is still on this list. Calvin Pickard has been ready to be an NHL goaltender for the last 2 seasons. And I don't understand some of the decisions Colorado's made. I know when they went with Rito Berra, I was like, wait, what? Why? And maybe they don't have faith in Pickard. But, I mean, the kid's 23 years old. He's ready. There's Mikko Rantanen's their top-rated prospect. He's supposed to be fantastic. Nicholas Milosh is 7th on their list. He was drafted 40th overall. Interestingly enough, Milosh was rated to go much higher the year before and then just fell. They have Connor Bleakley in here. Connor Bleakley actually re-entered the draft and was drafted by St. Louis, who have signed him. So when a guy re-enters the draft, it's hard to project him as an NHLer. And when he's drafted later than he was the first time around, it's even harder to project him as an NHLer. But maybe in St. Louis, maybe he can do it. I get the feeling this year's draft was pretty stacked. Time will tell, but it certainly seemed like this year's draft was pretty stacked. Columbus, I'm just going to see if I can find somebody to touch on here. Okay, Kirby Reichel, Leafs fans, listen up. The relationship between Reichel and the team was rocky after Reichel, through his agent, asked to be traded over the summer. Reichel's beef was not just that he hadn't been given a chance in the NHL, but his role in the AHL was not that of a prospect. Much of that angst was lifted, however, when Reichel was recalled in January and given a look. He's physical. He's a physical, punishing forward with a scoring touch, and he could rise in the lineup if veterans are moved. That's what Toronto picked up. So you can't bury that deal because that kid could be very good, and they have him rated higher than Bjorkstrand in here. And Bjorkstrand, for whatever reason, the NHL games from EA Sports love Bjorkstrand and have since he was drafted 89th overall in 2013. Remains to be seen if he's going to be able to do it. Elvis Merzlikins. Merkins. We'll just call him Merkins. So the Merkins had a Might be a good name for the Las Vegas expansion team, the Las Vegas Merkins. No, I'm not explaining it. It's not going to happen. Jonas Corpusalo is rated higher than Merkins, so and Corpusalo, I believe, will be their backup next year. Although they still have McElhinney, I believe, as well. Oh, Dallas. There's Honka. Honka should be ready to come up next year, I would think, with Russell moving out. Joki being traded. Joki being traded has to mean that Honka's close, if not ready. Guryanov, haven't seen him, so I don't know enough about him to make a statement, yay or nay. I mean, 12th overall draft pick. Dallas thinks highly of him. It doesn't mean he's going to make it. I mean, Jack Campbell was an 11th overall draft pick. And we know how that turned out. Jason Dickinson, like his game. Saw him late in the season. I like his game a lot. I don't know if he's future top 6, but he's definitely got the earmarks of being able to at least play third line this year and play well. Brett Ritchie, Nick Ritchie's older brother. Tough to say if he's ever going to be anything more than a middle of the road guy. But at number 5 on this list is Radek Faksa. Radek Faksa, drafted early, kind of projected as a dynamic forward, and he hasn't gone that route. But what he's done, and in the playoffs, he really showed this. He's got an itch. He is great at faceoffs. He is very good in the corners, good checker, smart player, and he will be an NHLer in the fall because he brings that to the table. And he's a cheap alternative to some of the other players they could have had out there. So, very impressed with Radek Faksa. When a player is able to adapt his game so that he makes it to the NHL, because the skills that got him drafted just don't translate to the pro league. And who knows, once Fax is comfortable, that offense could show up. Lindell, Shore, Roop Hintz. I hope Roop Hintz makes it just because his name is Roop Hintz. No, Detroit. Anthony Mantha is still their top-rated draft pick, or top-rated prospect. And Mantha's an example of how just because a prospect has a poor season, you don't just shift him off. This is an argument I had during the McCann trade. Anthony Mantha, all of the signs in his first rookie pro season pointed to Mantha being a bust. And there was a lot of talk that Detroit wasn't happy with him. They didn't like his progress, and they might be looking at moving him. They didn't, and he had a good season for Grand Rapids. Could make the team next year. Xavier Ouellet's another one. Tyler Bertuzzi has probably become better than... Okay, Detroit drafts him in the second round. He's kind of an off-the-board pick, but at the same time, he's almost lived up to it. Close. He's exceeded what I think scouts expected from him, but he hasn't quite got to where I think Detroit wants him yet. But it's good to see Todd's nephew doing well. Ryan Sproul, Coro, Sariarvi. Okay, Edmonton. And of course, this is from towards the end of this past season. They have Griffin Reinhart. Reinhart's a project player, somebody the Oilers believe will be an important part of their blue line for a long time. He is a long way from a finished product. He's big and strong and thinks the game well, but needs to work on his foot speed. And again, this is my underlying point. If your foot speed isn't ideal, it works against you now more than ever. And it becomes something that can anchor you down. He's been asked to be more physical and assertive. That's not good either, considering he's 6'4", 212 pounds. You shouldn't have to tell a guy who's 6'4", 212. Can you try a little harder out there? Oh, okay, coach. I hadn't thought of that. Thanks. It might look like he's behind schedule given he's in the minors 3 years after being selected 4th overall, but he's only 22 in a position where players don't peak till 25 or 26. So they're making excuses. When he was drafted 4th overall, I remember there was talk right away like, oh, he could be the Islanders' blue line this year. And then camp, it was obvious he was nowhere near ready. And now he's officially in project territory. Brossoit is close. Oh, look at that. The Oilers consider Brossoit their goalie of the future. I'm going to have to do this at some point someday where I say, okay, goalie of the future. And I go through old hockey books, and whether it's Justin Pogge with with the Maple Leafs or Mike Fountain with Vancouver, anybody who's tagged as goalie of the future, it's usually the kiss of death. And it's a joke a friend of mine at my old job and I used to make based on Kevin Weeks, where Brian Burke swore up and down for months, Kevin Weeks is our goalie of the future. We believe in Kevin Weeks. We're fine with the fact he hasn't won any games. We're fine with the fact that he's this and that. And then he got traded. And we were like, okay, goalie of the future. Nope. All right, Yuhar Kara, however you pronounce that. I'm not even going to try it. Sleepashev. Great camp, made the team look like a keeper. Covered a lot of ice. And impressively didn't neglect his own end. He back-checked hard, battled in the corners. Then the regular season bullets started flying and Sleepashev got left behind. Played 11 NHL games before getting sent down for good. The AHL season hasn't been stellar, but he's a 21-year-old in his first season in North America. He's one of those variables that if he can really get his game to a really high level, I don't know, we could be viewing an Oilers team that's capable of doing quite a bit. Caleb Jones, David Musso. I really hoped for David Musso when they drafted him in 2011. And there it is again. Foot speed's an issue. So when I talk about, and this goes back to Goodbranson, so I'm going to stop with Edmonton for now. I'll go through other teams some other video. Foot speed is huge. And because of the way the game is played, because the red line's out of the game and systems are taught at a younger and younger age now, where it used to be in juniors was just go out and have fun, and now it's more of a serious game. We can debate whether or not it's a better game for kids to come into than it used to be, but the fact that the pressure seems to be on to win at a younger age and play systems, and hit all your marks. But whether it's better or worse for the game, it's led to more speed and skill. So for some of these prospects who get drafted, and it might even be in the draft report, high-end skill, strong player, skating isn't the greatest, but that can be fixed. And I don't know if it can be fixed. I mean, if you think about it, if these kids have been skating for 15 years, and they've got to the point where they're drafted and they're skating like hell, they're doing their best. Not all of them are going to pick it up. Some of them will, but a lot of the time when I see this in scouting reports, and I can look back through any of those books, speed is an issue. Speed is an issue, and increasingly, if speed is the issue, they don't make the NHL. Because when you're looking to, let's say one of your top 4 defensemen gets hurt, and you got to call a guy up from the minors, you're looking at, are they going to be waiver eligible? Am I going to lose them on waivers if I try to send them back down? And can they step into the lineup and not hurt me? And if I have 2 different prospects, and one's a solid defensive prospect with good foot speed, the other one's kind of an offensive defenseman, but his foot speed's a little touchy, I'm going to look at that and say, okay, the offensive guy might get me more points, but he's going to cost me more points because when that puck's turned over, he can't get back and prevent a breakaway. And in terms of forwards, it can really drag a line down if you've got a guy who's a lot slower than the other 2 players. They can get caught offside. It can take a while for them to catch up to the play. You might have to slow your plays down for them, which allows the defense to adapt and cut off anything you're trying to do. Foot speed is huge. And throughout the playoffs, I said, speed kills. Pittsburgh was proof of it, but the entire NHL is going that way. That it is a speed, talent game. So I guess we'll see what happens from here, but I'm very excited about Prospects Camp and for all of the league, but for the Canucks, I'm very excited because I want to see Demko. I want to see what Demko can do. I would love very much for my television set to feature prospect games and show me what Demko does. Because if Thatcher Demko is the keeper in net that he's supposed to be, then I can relax about Vancouver. But it's hard to tell because it's one thing to do it in college and another thing to do it in the NHL. And not every college player who's great becomes an NHL great. You can just look up the Hobie Baker Award and see who's won it. And sometimes there are players you go, who? Because they never made it. Never made the NHL. And, it's a shorter schedule, and that changes things too. I know the last time these guys made the Stanley Cup playoffs, they did it during the shortened schedule coming out of the lockout. And I've always kind of said, and not to tease Maple Leafs fans, but I've always kind of said, that kind of makes it like, yeah, we made the playoffs, but it was lockout shortened. And they go, no, they made the playoffs. Well, but if you add 34 games to the season, would they have? And we don't know. But it's easier that if you go on a winning streak or you have a really good start to stay in the playoffs in a 48-game schedule than 82. And it's just, the other way around is also true. If you get off to a slow start, you're probably dead and done for in a 48-game schedule. And I'm not trying to diminish that season, but Toronto rode a fast start, and they had some good streaks in there, and there's no way to say if there was 34 more games in the season what might have happened. And we'll never know. But it would seem that because that was the exception rather than the rule, it's, the odds are they would have had a hard time. And I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible here. I am. But I don't think they make it in an 82-game schedule. And the collapse against Boston, I don't think they got over that. It took them at least a year to get over that collapse in Game 7. Because that's the kind of collapse that just haunts you. And players will say whatever they have to say, but that's the kind of thing that haunts you. So, anyway, that's my thoughts for the day. No free agent signings. It looks like maybe the GMs are on summer break as well. But thanks for watching, and yeah, I'm watching Price is Right because there's nothing on television, and because Amber's on it. So if Amber's on it, I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna watch Price is Right. Amber's on. I'll watch Price is Right. So yeah, and it's 4th of July, so the girls are wearing really sparkly dresses today. I don't know. Anyways, happy 4th of July to any viewers in the U.S. and to the rest of the world. Happy 4th of July, even though it doesn't mean anything to you. And if you're in Britain, happy getting rid of the Yanks Day. So that's it for me.